Welcome to the Growth Street Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. Welcome back to the Growth Street Podcast. I could not be more excited for today, our 7th episode, to be sitting across my best friend, Daniel Gutierrez, who's currently working at BlackRock. He worked for BNY Mellon as an intern. He went to school at Rutgers, Clemson University, and has really done a lot of unique things, had a very unique career path. So Danny, I'm super excited to talk to you today about all things about your career, your journey, what you've really learned, and just kind of your experience as a whole.
No, it's great to be here. Thank you for hosting me.
Yeah, man. I know the weather outside today is not the best, but we had to make it bright somehow, right?
The rain caught me a little off guard, but yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah, so you came from Union City today, correct?
Yeah, so, me and my girlfriend, we moved in together, coming up on 2 years next January to Union City. Shout out Masha and Tofu if you're out there. But yeah, no, it's been a great experience up there. It's a different lifestyle than, what we've experienced in Central Jersey and Monroe. But overall, I think the change up has been good. It's been great for my growth as a whole. And like being so close to New York, it really just doesn't feel like I'm missing anything not being in there. I still get the full experience.
Yeah, it's like you get the perfect balance of being close enough to home, but also being close enough to the city to where that's where you work.
Exactly.
So what's that been like for you? Being, kind of I wouldn't say we're a small town in Monroe, but like a medium-sized town in New Jersey. And now making that big move to living in the city, going to work in New York, commuting, wearing, that business professional, making that life adjustment. What's that been like?
Yeah, I guess I should bring it back to the beginning, right? So, coming out of college, I went to Rutgers for information technology and informatics with a specialization in web design and product development. So my original internship opportunity at BNY Mellon, I was a what they call a S.T.A.R.T developer intern, and I was utilizing Angular, building up a forms builder, utilizing REST APIs. But unfortunately, I got into the coding game a little late into my collegiate career. So that's when I wanted to transition over to something more soft skill in tech, which led me to the Aladdin Client Services program at BlackRock. And for those of you that don't know, BlackRock has this investment platform called Aladdin, and so it is my duty now to service the users of that application, such as traders and portfolio managers, and even work with third-party vendors like Bloomberg to resolve issues.
Hey guys, it's Dersh from the Growth Street Podcast. I want to stop you guys for a quick second just to say thank you. Thank you for your support. And to further grow our channel and give you guys better experiences, if you guys could please like, follow, subscribe, and even leave a review, maybe even a comment. That'd be much appreciated. Share the podcast with anyone that you think could be interested in the video. And yeah, I'll just get back to the video. Hope you enjoy. See ya. Yeah, speaking of Bloomberg, that was actually my junior internship as well.
Yes,
so
it was.
It's a funny tie there. So I'm curious. So one thing that really stands out to me is the different paths you've taken, right? Kind of to go back to at least the beginning of school. You started off at Clemson University. You had like a first semester at an outside university. You went to Clemson. Then you transferred to Rutgers. Then you interned at BNY, and now you're at BlackRock. You've taken a lot of steps, I would say,
Yes.
and not the very traditional style of where it's one school, then college, then work. One thing I talk a lot to my clients about and the audience is what it's like getting a job. And nowadays, people have a really hard time with getting jobs, and it's been a real struggle.
Yeah.
So what's been your experience in terms of kind of getting opportunities? Like, right, with this BlackRock role, I think of, I'm sure it was a competitive process. There's a lot of applicants, but somehow, you made it to the top of the hill, and now you've been working there for almost 2 years. So what's that been like for you in terms of kind of starting a new role and taking control after college?
Well, so I have to say, admittedly, I felt a little bit of imposter syndrome when I was first going to BlackRock, just because, I didn't go to business school, and, in the orientation program, it's like, orientation part of the program, there's maybe like 300 people in New York. They all went to prestigious schools, Duke, NYU, Princeton, all that sort.
All
so
the big boys.
It's like, me coming from Rutgers University, not having gone to business school, I felt a real lack of knowledge as a whole on financial markets and like what BlackRock did as a whole. But I do feel like the type of program that I'm in, it has really driven me to go out of my way to lecture myself, to learn from others and my peers and even mentors, right? So that's been a really great experience as a whole. And I definitely would say that I've adjusted particularly well. In the beginning, it was definitely a bit of a struggle learning how to, I guess you could say, behave
Yeah.
Not behave.
Kind of
But
like just like fit in necessarily.
yeah, exactly, right? It's like your first like corporate experience job.
Mhm.
I mean, like my internship, it was fully remote, right? So it's like I didn't really know what it was like to be inside of a corporate building, how to again like act, how to interact with my coworkers or like my managers. So when I got to BlackRock, all of that stuff was very, very raw for me, right? But over time, you know, I think that because of the great people I am surrounded by and have been surrounded by there, I was able to adjust really, really well. And honestly, I think moving forward into my next career lined up with them, I'll be in a good spot.
Yeah, man. And I think like for one, the imposter syndrome thing is so real, bro. Like I feel like for me especially, I have felt it in a lot of different moments from kind of when I walked into college. For me, when I went to University of Maryland, I'm sure you know, I was involved in the freshman connection program. So when I actually got my application received back to me, it was you've been enrolled for the spring semester. And it was like, wait, I'm starting later.
Yeah,
So I'm not like a normal student. I'm like one of the not good enough.
Yeah, it's like,
almost.
what's this?
Yeah, it's like, what is this? And then it was so funny. I went to college. I went to University of Maryland, and the first day we had this massive symposium for all freshmen. And while I'm sitting in like the section with all the other freshman connection students, the person speaking at the event was going section by section and announcing this is the computer science learning program. This is the all the different programs that were at University of Maryland. They go to freshman connection and everyone booed us, bro. They were like, these are the imposters. Like literally that's what it felt like. So that even when I was applying for roles, again, I can really relate to them. So I think a lot of people feel this too. Because when I was applying for roles at LinkedIn, especially my last round interview, I was with a student from Princeton, from the University of North Carolina, and MIT. And I'm a communication major from Maryland, and that imposter syndrome is so real. But I think what me and you both have done is we don't use it as a reason to have pity. It's not a reason why we can't do something. It's almost a motivating factor for why we can do so good. You know what I mean?
Exactly. It lights a fire in you in a sense. You know, when I was, felt like I had imposter syndrome and I was surrounded by all these like really smart and intellectual people, it made me want to better myself, right? Not only at my craft of the job itself, but just me becoming a better, more knowledgeable person as a whole, right? And I definitely feel like as a person, as a professional, it has carried me such a far way and will continue to carry me such a far way.
Yeah, dude. I think everyone always kind of struggles with different things, but we all almost go through the same experiences, right? Whether it's your first internship, you feel, oh my God, I don't know how to handle this. Your first job, I don't know how to handle this. You go to college for the first time, I don't know how to handle this. But I think there's a big lesson of like, almost like your body is wired to survive in new environments, right? When you get thrown to the deep end, I mean, you're sinking or you're swimming, and we're wired to swim.
True.
And so for me, again, I think about you and again, your experiences. What's like some advice you would give to someone kind of finishing college or someone who's maybe a junior, maybe a senior, and they look outside and they're like, wow, my life's really about to change, and I can't even imagine life as an adult. How am I supposed to, move out of home? How am I supposed to get my first career? How much money should I be looking for? These are a lot of hard questions people ask themselves, and you're someone who's just kind of wrapped up that process like myself. So I'm curious, like, what your perspective is on that.
Yeah, so I think it's a bit of a balance between looking within, a little bit of self-reflection on what you want, who you are, who you want to become, and getting out of your comfort zone, right? Externally with other people, and even externally with other types of career paths or sectors that you don't have any experience in, right? Yeah. For me, I had no experience working under an asset manager or with an asset manager. Sorry. And also I didn't really know what I wanted to do coming out of school, right? Like, yes, I had my internship at BNY Mellon, but coding was not necessarily my passion per se, right?
Yeah.
So I think a little bit of it is looking within, trying to understand, okay, who you are right now. Who are you right now, right? Understanding who the type of people you look up to. I would also say, trying to gain a sense of just in general what you are interested in, right? You don't even have to pick a specific thing, right? But if you feel like you are interested in X, right? Just do a little bit of information, right? Step your toes in the water in a sense, right? Like get a feel for it.
We're so young, we have so much time, right?
Exactly. And in terms of, that moves on to my next point of going externally, right? Like bring yourself out of that comfort zone. If you do have an area of expertise, right? That's really good to have a specialization. But I also think what makes people valuable, not only as professionals, but as people, is being diverse, right?
Facts.
Like understanding that, yes, you might have a specialization in this, but you also should have a larger understanding of the supporting or surrounding areas that come with that, right? So.
No, it's true. It's true. Yeah. So, I mean, for me, it's like when you think of those experiences, right? It's kind of finding the people you want to be. What I tell everyone is we're so young. Like we have so much time to figure things out. My advice to everyone is follow your passion. That's like the number one thing I always kind of tell people to do, is because if you're in a place where you're not really enjoying what you're doing, or it's hard for you to see yourself there, it's going to make you have a negative image about the entire experience. Whereas even if you have a slight interest or a passion or a hobby regarding a certain topic, whether it's computer science, whether it's photography, whether it's career development, whether it's technology, we all have things that interest us, right? So it's finding what interests you and then following that path. What I tell everyone is growth is not a straight line. Growth is like this.
Correct.
It's a wave. You're going to go down, you're going to go up, you're going to go backwards, you're going to go forwards. But it's knowing that that it's not going to be straight is almost sure what gives you almost inner peace and presence throughout these moments, and that grace. Because think about it, right? I'll use an example. Like for you, transferring from universities, right? What was that experience like? Because a lot of people think, there's all these negative stigmas around transferring from colleges, or maybe leaving your job to do another career, or stopping, like even my last guest, Carly, she dropped out of college completely to launch a company. So everyone thinks there's these certain ways to go and do things, but there's not. So
there's no blueprint.
Yeah, there's no blueprint. So how have you almost like realized that through your own experiences, and what has that taught you?
So, at the time when I was going to Clemson, I was going through some personal issues, and, unfortunately, I just didn't feel like I had enough of a base down in South Carolina to keep me there for another year.
Yeah.
It's funny enough, I actually was trying not to transfer into Rutgers. I really wanted to go to University of Maryland or Seton Hall. Yeah. But, fate led me towards Rutgers. And for, a straight whole year, I was trying to get into the business school. And in fact, my first semester at Rutgers was by far my worst. I think I finished with like a 1.7 GPA or something like that. Yeah, I mean, that transition period for me, I was going through a lot of personal issues, and I just wasn't taking my academics seriously. I wasn't taking my career seriously. I took a major L. For that fall semester of 2019. And I think that during the pandemic, when that first hit, spring of 2020, right? That was like the semester it hit from college. During that time being home, it definitely made me reflect more on, okay, maybe I should get my shit together. Maybe I should actually, start caring about my academics, because time is going to run out before you know it, right? Like at that point when COVID hit, we were 2 years into college, right? And I still didn't feel like I had any sense in the world of like what I was going to do, or like what I wanted to do for that matter. Yeah. So, I think that this like spark of innovation, of self-growth, right, came from that self-reflection, just understanding of like where I was and how it just wasn't good for me anymore. Staying stagnant like that, it's not going to take you anywhere.
Yeah. And I think again, like kind of going off what you're saying, is that this lesson to be learned from what you said is you can go through a hard time. You can, not have the best semester. You can really be struggling. You could be without an internship for an entire summer. No matter where you are, you can pick it right back up. All it takes is a little bit of looking inside, figuring out what your goals are, and start attacking them. From that moment in 2020, what happened after that for you? Because look at where you are now, man. You said you were a 1.7 GPA transfer, going through personal issues, and now, bang, BNY Mellon internship. Right after college, bang, now you're working at BlackRock as an analyst. Now you're a senior analyst. So you're doing so many big things from such a, almost like a vulnerable point, and like almost like a ground zero for what it must have felt like.
Definitely. That's
powerful, man. Like that's journey. That's you going through your training arc, being kicked while you're down almost, to now taking that and leveraging it to being, where you are now, living in an awesome apartment on the 5th floor somewhere in Union City, where you can see the whole all the skyscrapers in New York. But that's credit to what it's like to go through that and kind of bounce back out of it.
Yes, sir. No, exactly to your point. It's almost like, for my Naruto fans out there, the Rock Lee training, right? It's like, you might not have any special abilities or powers or whatever, but it's like if you try to get 1% better every single day, eventually you'll get there or even exceed your goals, right? Yep. So, for me at the time in 2020, I was really trying to branch out, trying to do some research on some of the other majors they offered within Rutgers that wasn't in the business school. And that's when I came across the ITI program, Information Technology and Informatics program at Rutgers. And what I found so interesting about that particular major was that it was highly elective focused. Now, to some, that may sound a relatively easy way out of getting a degree, but for me, I looked at it as an opportunity of versatility. And what I mean by that is that they had electives where I was able to take a little bit of coding experience like JavaScript and Python. I was able to take classes in human computer sociology and like how humans and technology, how they interact, right? Like how do we coexist? How are we going to coexist in the future? What impacts has it had on us? So I think that this major, it was almost a combination of psychology, sociology, CS major, and a little bit of business.
You've really done a lot of unique things and moved around quite a bit. I think, after you graduated, you moved to a whole new city. You took on this huge new role. What was that adjustment like from living at home to now almost starting a whole entire new life and starting this whole new job in New York?
Yeah, so at the beginning of my role, I think like the first 4 to 6 months, I was actually living at home in Monroe, next to you, and my commute total was 3 hours or something like that. Wow. It was ridiculous.
Wow.
I mean, you're working a 10, 11 hour day, and then you have a 3 hour commute total. Right?
So what time did you wake up and what time did you get home?
Yeah, so my day to day would look 5 a.m. wake up. I'd have to get to Metro Park by latest 6, right? And then I had to be in the office at the time around 7:30. So I would have to go drive myself to Metro Park. From Metro Park, take the train into Penn Station. From Penn Station, take the subway to East 52nd Street, and and I had to do all that all the way back. And that was one of the worst parts of living at home and commuting to the city, right? So for those of you out there, if you can afford to move out, I highly recommend it. But yeah, I mean, once me and my girlfriend, I think January 2023, moved into a little town called Guttenberg, around the Edgewater area. That's when I felt like my day-to-day was getting a lot easier, just because I had a bus directly to Port Authority. My building was right there, and I could just focus a lot more of my energy now onto work and my personal life, just cutting out that commute, right? So I think that was the first bit of adjustment I had to do. And then I would say, again, living in this new part of New Jersey, right across the water from New York, I honestly don't feel like I'm missing anything by not being in the city, right?
Yeah.
I still feel like I get the full New York experience. I still feel like I, get to expand, you know what I mean? So yeah.
Because you're just close enough to be in the city, and you're so close enough. If you want to come home for a weekend or for a week, you can still do that, right? It's a perfect location for you. Because you're across the river, right? You're a little river ride away from the city. And it cuts down that 3 hour commute time, I'm sure, by a lot.
Yeah, I mean, shit. Right now, me and my girlfriend, we're living in Union City. So, I go to Hoboken Path, and then I think from 33rd Street, walk all the way to Hudson Yards, and we're right there.
So 3 hour commute to now it's what?
40 minutes.
See that. And again, that time you're saving saves you so much time to go do your other things. Keep learning, building other passions.
And continue my passions in my personal life too. I love going to the gym. I still love reading, playing video games. Shout out Red Rising to all my Red Rising fans out there. Just picked it up.
No, but it's good though. You have a good balance of by saving all that time, you get to go to work and really again focus on that while you're there. But then now when you're done, that you're in a new area, you get to focus on all these new, not even new things, but focus on yourself at a certain point, right? The hard thing, I guess, people are probably curious about is how do you get a role like that, right? How do you get a role to work at a big company like BlackRock in the city, go through all those interview rounds? I'd love to hear a lot about your recruiting process. I think a lot of people at home are probably curious about that too.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's a pretty funny story. So, again, from my internship at Bank of New York Mellon, I got a role in Pittsburgh for an operations analyst, right?
Okay.
And, the money was okay. And a lot of the people closest to me really felt like I should try it out for a year or two, and then if I didn't like it, transition to somewhere else.
Yeah.
See, I didn't want that for myself. I believed in myself. I believed that I can get more. I believed that I deserved more. And so that's what led me to applying to a company like BlackRock, because in this particular program, I felt like it had everything I was looking for. Client facing, soft skills technology, right? A lot of SQL work. You have to know what the front end looks like, how it relates to the back end, how that's translated to third-party vendors, that sort of thing. And then lastly, you know, because I'm working with portfolio managers and traders on a day in, day out basis, you get that raw financial market experience and knowledge and skills, right?
Yeah.
And so my recruiting process, you know, I knew no one at the company. So no referrals for me. And, you know, I just applied like everyone else. And what was I going to say? So back in college, funny enough, I never checked my emails on the weekends. I had pretty bad. Yeah, I know. But I never checked my emails on weekends. And it turns out that I accidentally missed the deadline to submit my hire review.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. Pretty bad. Not going to lie. Don't do what I did.
Check your emails.
Yeah, check your emails on the weekends. But what was I going to say? Thankfully, you know, I think the lucky stars, you know, this BlackRock recruiter personally reached out to me on my phone.
Wow.
And she sent me a text and she was like, hey, like, you know, are you still interested in this position? We're still hiring. We think you'd be a great fit. If you're still interested, submit your hire review by X date. So I did, and thankfully I got my foot in the door with a behavioral interview.
Okay.
Just, you know, more so questions about yourself, like who you are as an individual, what you've been through. And then the last and final round was a super day. And for me, that was 3 back-to-back interviews, all an hour and a half.
Wow.
And each individual interviewer on that super day had a different area of expertise within the program. So, you know, they were getting a good sense of where I might be able to fit within the sub teams of the program, right?
Yeah.
And I remember one of the questions that the first interviewer asked me was like, hey, Dan, like if you had $10,000 worth to invest in any asset, what would it be?
Wow. That's some question.
You know, I was doing a lot of research on BlackRock, obviously, at the time in preparation for my interview. And I noticed that BlackRock was one of the biggest asset managers for ETFs specifically. Now, ETFs are like a basket of funds, or not a basket of funds. They're a basket of assets, right? So instead of you putting money into just, you know, let's just say Microsoft, you can now take that $100 and split it across Microsoft, split it to Meta, whatever it is, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I had said that I would invest into a technology ETF. They followed up with which one. I was like, oh no. Yeah. But I remember, I also, one of the other questions they asked me was, you know, if you could be the CEO of like any company, what would it be? And at the time, you know, Bitcoin was blowing up. I mean, it was like not August. It was like November, October 2019. Bitcoin was hitting like that 60,000, 65,000 mark. It was really blowing up. Everyone thought that it was just about to hit for consumer use, right, on like everyday basis.
Yeah.
And I had said Coinbase because, you know, Coinbase, I love their product. I love their app. What I was going to say, I was a user of it myself on a week-to-week, month-to-month basis. Okay. And I had said that. And, you know, I think the interviewer thought it was a pretty interesting answer, but, you know, yeah.
Yeah, so what was that? So you had what, 2 rounds, 3 rounds?
I had 2 rounds.
2 rounds. And in general, so I'm sure you applied to a lot of other roles, right? I'm sure you applied to other roles that you were curious about. What about this experience, like, do you think you learned from, or can you give some advice to for someone watching at home?
Yeah, so one of the biggest curveball questions that they had asked me was, you know, what's something you've recently read in the news or, you know, again, like online, relating to our industry or relating to BlackRock. That threw me off a little bit because I did not have anything planned, in fairness. So when the first interviewer asked me that question, you know, I had to pull something out of thin air. And I think I said something relating to how BlackRock is supporting small businesses during COVID or something along those lines.
Yeah.
But then I remember literally in that 5-minute window between the previous interviewer and the next one, I was going through all these articles trying to find like the best one I could utilize. And I would say biggest thing, make sure you're doing your own knowledge search on what current events are happening within that industry, within that job market, within that
company.
Yes.
And why do you think that's an important skill to have during a recruiting process? Because I agree with you.
Well, I think it's important because, you know, it shows the recruiter you're talking to that you have genuine interest in not only what a company does, but the world that they're a part of, right? Like, what are their competitors up to? what is happening maybe in government that's impacting this business, right? So I think showing them that you have a genuine interest in this goes a long way, because sure, you can be a bookworm and like know all the financial formulas and how, to do accounting, taxes, how to trade and stuff like that. But being informed in current events means that you are continuously learning, right? So that's the biggest thing.
I completely agree with you, because think about it, right? If you're a recruiter, which I once was for LinkedIn as part of my rotational program, I was a product marketing manager recruiter. So when I was at LinkedIn, my second rotation was me on a recruiting team, being the person who actually goes and recruits people to interview, and then doing their first round interview, taking notes, and then submitting a ranking of the people I interviewed to my boss.
Oh, man.
So I actually was once recruiting as a student, and then I was recruiting as a recruiter. So I was on both sides of the spectrum. And from what you're saying is, I think having general knowledge past the normal informational things that you already know about a company. For example, everyone knows what Instagram is, but what do you know about it that's different than someone else knows about it?
Yeah.
Like, have the extra knowledge is a really important thing to have, because think about it, right? In an interview, if I interview 50 people or a recruiter interviews 50 people for a certain role, they're all the same. They're all the same relatively, right? The only reason they're interviewing you is because you look good on paper, and it's going to take you through the first door. The first hurdle is good school, good grades, good experiences. Our resume looks pretty good. All right, let's interview him, right? Or interview her. So that's the way in the door. But the way to actually get the job and pass each round of the interview is so different. For example, I'll tell you one of my favorite secret tips that I give everyone. So imagine you're in an interview. What's the first question that you get asked?
Sorry.
You're good.
First question I get asked.
Yeah, in any interview.
Like, how are you doing?
Yeah, so that's exactly that. So, and what would you say? What does a normal person say to that?
Doing well. How are you?
Exactly. And I'm here to tell you that is the worst possible thing you can say in an interview. Hi, how are you? Is, I'm good. How are you doing? I had a good day today. What about you? You say, oh, yeah, I'm doing wrong. That's the worst way to start your interview. The power to really separate yourself in an interview comes down to the power, almost the control of human nature, right? Because if every single person has the same level of experience, what makes you different? Think about it this way too. When I was a recruiter and I would have to pitch all my candidates to my boss, or a recruiter, that's what they would have to do. They're not going to remember every single detail about every single interview, about what they said about their experience. They're not going to say, oh, I remember Danny, used to work at BNY Mellon, and he did exactly 34 conversions using this algorithm. They're going to have no idea. Like, they're not going to remember that because they have so many interviews. But what will they remember? Exactly how you made them feel throughout the different processes of the interview, right? So in the beginning of the interview, that's your part where you want to build that personal connection. So if you ask me, hi, how are you? Ask me that.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing good, It's pretty good day today. That's the wrong way to say it. The right way to answer that question is saying, Dan, I'm having a really weird day today. Yesterday and today it's been really rainy outside. I got a flat tire yesterday. So this interview's my highlight. So I'm really looking forward to it. But this weekend, thank God, I have a little vacation plan. I'm going to Orlando. I'm seeing some friends. I have an early flight tomorrow morning. So we're going to do some remote work on the plane, in a new city. But, see some palm trees, see the ocean. I'm excited for that. And then now what happens when I ask you, how are you doing? Now you're almost incentivized to give me the exact same level of response. So what would you say if I gave you that? How are you doing, Danny?
I would say that, pretty tough week overall. But, this interview, like you said, is definitely one of those peak moments during the week. And I think this weekend, I'm just looking forward to hopping onto Helldivers, defeating the automatons.
Exactly, yeah. It's like everyone has their specific moments that can you let someone in, right? So then what's going to happen is by the end of the interview, at the end of the conversation, I'm going to go back and call back to that moment. So we're going to have the whole interview after almost building that personal connection. And then how are we going to end? It's going to say, thank you. Do you have any questions for me? We'll ask those questions, those formalities. But then I'm going to say before you go, Dan, thank you for the interview so much. I really appreciate it. I also want you to have a great time playing Helldivers this weekend, right? And that's your way of connecting the dots. That's your way of bridging that personal connection. And those are the things that will separate you, because now they're going to say, wow, he crushed the actual interview part of the phase, but he also we also had like almost a personal connection to
relatable moment.
I want to root for that person now.
Yeah.
Like I know them more than I know any other candidate. So that's what stands out.
It's not so transactional. It's
exactly.
more like a conversation, right?
Exactly. One thing I always say is the less you're talking during the interview, the better. Let me say that one more time. The less you're speaking as the interviewee, the better. The more conversational you are with your interviewer, the better things will go. For example, if you're asking me a question and I'm just going to say, the response, and then I'm not going to just sit here and you're going to comment on my response, right? You're going to say, oh, great. Why do you, something about what I said? What most people do is they'll just sit there and be quiet and wait for the next question. No, keep the conversation going. It doesn't have to be, you should not ask them questions so early on, but just keep talking, right? Because the more the recruiter's talking, the more they're building that connection with you, and the more that bridge is being built, right? So I think really leveraging human nature is one of the biggest differentiators you can do. Because, again, I really think about, for example, people apply to hundreds of jobs when they finish college, right? Or hundreds of internships when they're applying for internships. You may only get 5 interviews, only 10 interviews, right? I mean, you may get 0. It's how can you do the most of what you've gotten to get to the next stage? And if you've not gotten anything done yet, all right, how can I improve this to get to where I want to go? And I think leveraging human nature is the biggest part, right? It's writing that handwritten note, sending that message on LinkedIn to someone who works inside that company to have a conversation. It's having that how are you moment in the interview process, right? So these are things that I really love giving advice on because, again, like yourself, it's be personal, be a human being. We're not just interviewee interviewers. No, we're here to talk. We're here to build a relationship, and that will take you further in the interview process.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah, and that's why I'm curious for you, right? Like, where does that really play a role in kind of your corporate life now, right? Because you're working in a pretty, intensive role at BlackRock. You're around a lot of people. You have a lot, you told me about a demo you did recently. So you're around people all the time. And I'm sure I would love to hear you speak to what it's like to also, be personable and have that differentiator compared to some of your peers.
Yeah, so I mean, I would say that, working at a company like BlackRock, you have so many diverse people there that coming from all various backgrounds of life, right? And, there's going to be people that are extreme extroverts like myself. And then you're going to be working next to someone who might be an extreme introvert, right? Like where they're not so open, they're more shelled off, right?
Yeah.
And so I would say in terms of being personable with my coworkers, my teammates, the people I directly work with on a day-to-day basis,
Yeah.
I try to think about it as, okay, sometimes you're going to have your days where it feels like you're all in the mud together, right? You're all like experiencing the same shitty day.
Yeah.
Maybe you had like the same shitty client experiences on some calls or some tickets or anything of that nature, right? But the one silver lining I find it for myself through all of that shit is that we're all experiencing it together. And if I could help someone with their problem, right, it makes me feel just a little bit better knowing the fact that I'm taking the weight off their shoulders a little bit, right?
Yeah.
It's also just letting them know, like, hey, you're not alone, right? I'm not alone either. I also can rely on you. I know that you have my back just as much as I have yours.
You're there together.
Exactly. The biggest thing is that, when you're on a team, it's being collaborative, right? When you have people that shell themselves off on a team, right, you're not going to maximize production. And so for me, I try to not only get the most out of myself, but get the most out of my teammates through positive methods. And some of those positive methods might be, sitting down with them, going through their investigation process. Okay, like how are they thinking about this certain thing? How are they interpreting the problem itself, right? And if I can offer more clarity on that, I will. Or other times, maybe they offer me some insight into how they think.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, okay, that's a great way to look at it. Maybe I got to start looking at it like that too. In terms of my managers, I would say that, these are people that are obviously more senior level than I am. They've been in the industry longer than I have been. So naturally, it is at times a little bit intimidating talking to them, right? But to your point with the recruiter, right? They're just people too.
Yes.
Just as much as us.
We're all just people at the end of the day.
When you can find relatable ground with people like your managers, even with clients you don't even work with, right? Once you find the ground level of
just like relatability and understanding each other.
Yes. It makes the relationship so much better, so much easier, right? Much more natural. And so, in the beginning when I first got to BlackRock, my conversations with my manager felt a lot more again, transactional, more rigid, not as free flowing.
Yeah.
Now, talk to them just as casually as we're talking right now.
About everything, exactly. Yeah, and then, it really makes me, I think people are curious, what's it like in the very beginning of a new role? So if you could almost give yourself, if you hit the rewind button, right? Imagine a world where, okay, I'm going to press rewind. I'm going to restart my entire experience from day one at BlackRock. My first day going into the office, starting new, what would you do differently or do completely anew? Also, what would you do the same? From how can someone go from, oh my God, I have the most stressful recruiting season of my entire life. I'm in a new role now. It's high intensive. It's a new lifestyle. How can they go in day one? And what would you do if that was you?
Yeah. So, my day one, I struggled a lot with imposter syndrome. Not even just day one. I would probably say the first 3 months on the job, I was dealing with imposter syndrome. And the main reason for that was because, I felt like because I didn't go to business school, I was lacking certain education, as it were, or knowledge on how financial markets worked and how financial services worked as a whole.
Yeah.
And all these other people, they went to Princeton, they went to Duke, they went to NYU, all these great schools, right? And, they are coming from business backgrounds. So I would say for me, right now I am taking some time in my personal life to study for what's called the SIE certification.
Okay.
Now, for those of you that don't know, the SIE certification is Securities Industries Exam. So anyone can take it. It's through FINRA. It's $80. You do not need to be licensed by a firm to take this exam. And what it does is it provides you very foundational knowledge on, okay, how does trading work? How do the financial markets work? What are the different asset classes you can trade with, right? And so the one thing I wish is that I had taken this certification going into the role, because that certification, that foundational knowledge base would have propelled me so much faster than where I actually was in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the experience I had coming into the role was more technology focused. And my job is technology focused. It's just that having those financial concepts, again, as a foundation, would have bolstered me and propelled me so much faster. So I would say taking the time, leading up into your full-time career or even internship, taking the personal time to educate yourself on your own free time, that's the best thing.
Yeah, I think that's a good message, especially for those who feel like they're not necessarily qualified to be there. That imposter that you're talking about, right? It's like I'm around all these other superstars who have all this certain experience, and this is let's say it's a data internship, and I have no idea what data is, but in the interview process I did well, and now I'm here. Take that extra week before the internship starts, between school and your internship, and do some research. Get a basic level of understanding. But also, I think people also really struggle with how you can make that adjustment, right? Like, okay, now I'm around all these people. I'm told I should network. I'm told I should talk to these people. I'm told I should not do these certain things. People are just lost, and they're going to just do what everyone else does. What are some things that you think of that people can do off rip? Because for me, if I could redo my time at LinkedIn, we were in a cohort. It was about 23 to 25 people. It was called the BLP program, the Business Leadership Program. And we come in there, and it's 25 of us. And it was a crazy first week. We were doing a lot of fun. It was a really fun first week. It was, imagine an experience of fun workshops. You're playing some games together. You're learning about the company, what LinkedIn is. And that was great. And I think it was so easy to get jaded by that positive experience. I think that's what work was going to be like. But no, that realistically, as your first week at a new role, they're meant to make you feel excited and welcome, which is a good thing. You should be excited about the new place you're going to be working at. But the second you start actually doing what your role is where now you have to really put your thinking hat on and think, okay, how can I set myself up here to succeed, right? And what I think about when that happens is, okay, how can I walk into a new position and do well? The first thing I would do is set up a call with everyone who's involved with your role. Your managers, your stakeholders, people who may be working under you, the hierarchy, whoever is in your kind of neighborhood, in your field, have those conversations. 2 is I would ask everyone the question, what are you expecting from me, and what priorities do you care about a lot? By you focusing on those things, now you know what is important to them. You know how to align with their needs to kind of build that bridge and almost like build a relationship through that. And because if you help someone with what they need, then now it's like, now I want to help you with what you need.
Exactly.
Right? Not saying you don't need to expect anything in return, but it's more in the sense of like, if I help you with something that you actually need help with, then inherently I'm going to find that more valuable and want to hear you out or talk to you more and be in your space. So I think when you start something new, whether it's internship, whether it's a class, whether it's a job, I think the big thing is talk to everyone who is involved. 2 is find a person to be friends with. Like find someone to make it not feel as daunting as this. It's gonna be a scary place walking. You know that feeling, right? When you're in high school, you walk into your first new class. It's period 1, and you're looking around to see who's in your class. What table am I gonna sit at? You walk into your new college course. Oh my God, it's a big lecture hall. Do I know anyone in here? Who's a professor? You go into your first new job. I saw them post on LinkedIn that they're gonna work here. I think they're interesting. I should go talk to them. It's a pretty intimidating first step, right? But find your person, talk to everyone, take a deep breath, and from there you can really move on and figure out how to succeed.
I mean, yeah, that was practically my experience. When I was when I was attending the orientation event in New York for this program. Everyone that was there, almost everyone that was there, I should say, was coming from the internship last year. So they all knew each other. You had people talking to each other, catching up. And I didn't necessarily have my go-to, right? I didn't have my group of people where I was like, okay, great to see you guys again.
Yeah.
So for me, I had to generate those relationships from ground zero, completely fresh. And again, to your point, it's all about putting yourself out there. It's about getting out of your comfort zone, right?
Yes.
And, I would say for the people out there who find themselves to be more introverted, just understand, you're there for a reason, right? You're there for a reason. The company saw something in you. The people see something in you. You're there for a reason.
Yes.
Understand that. You're valued. Second thing is to know that, hey, these are people just like you. I'm sure they're just as anxious as you. They also do not know what's going on. Go out and just share that with them, right? It's okay to admit to not only yourself, but to the people you're surrounded by, like, hey guys, this is a brand new role at this big company. I have no idea what's going on here, but how are you doing? Right.
Yep.
I think that I just being honest with them about your feelings, about what your thought process is like in the very beginning, it'll knock down all those doors. Right.
Yeah. I think a great thing that I did was when I was at LinkedIn the very first day, I looked at my friend and we both had this face on like, wow, this is crazy. So I literally said to him, and we were both everyone's kind of nervous at this point. I'm like, yo, this is crazy, right? He's like, dude, I was thinking the same thing. Boom, right there.
Exactly.
Like you both think, like everyone there is thinking the exact same thing, right?
That's the biggest thing.
Like that's your opportunity to bond over that thing. Don't let the shadow cover you up. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
this is your chance to, hey, I know they're thinking the same thing as me. Let's try to cook something here.
Exactly. It just because you have to understand, what they're feeling is what you're feeling, and it becomes relatable, right? And so that opens up doorways to talking more about who you are, what's their background like, right?
Yeah.
And before you know it, it's like, hey, you got a fucking work friend.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, exactly. No, exactly. And I think again, some things that are so interesting are like the work dynamics, right? But even like as a college student, for you have a very unique experience. You went to Clemson. You started off at, I forget the university within Clemson, and then you went to Clemson University, and then from Clemson University, you went to Rutgers. And then we had COVID in the middle of that whole thing too. So college can be a really crazy experience, unique for everyone, right? Some people can go to one school, some people go to two schools, some people can be commuting. Everyone has their own unique experience of what college is like. Some people drop out. Like my last guest, Carly, she didn't finish school because she wanted to launch her own company, right? So for you, what were the ways that kind of you handled college to set yourself up to succeed? Not even just studying or anything, but like if you could go back and do college again, or even like reflecting on your time there, how do you think that you almost set yourself up well, or the things that you faced to enable yourself now to look back on and say, wow, this actually helped me a lot?
Yeah, so I would say, when I was first going to Clemson, I was first going through this nearby school called TCTC, and that was a bridge program into Clemson University.
Yep.
So at the time, I really wanted to be a marketing major. And honestly, I only chose marketing because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Now, when I officially decided to transfer out of Clemson, due to personal reasons, funny enough, I really did not want to go to Rutgers. I was aiming for University of Maryland. I was aiming for Seton Hall. But fate had decided Rutgers was it. And I would say,
look at you wearing the Rutgers right now.
Go RU. What was I going to say? But, the first full year at Rutgers, my sophomore year, I was trying to get into business school, and what was I going to say? My fall semester of sophomore year, so fall 2019.
Yep.
By far the worst year I ever did. It was like a 1.7 GPA, and I wasn't taking school seriously. I wasn't taking life seriously or my career.
Yeah.
I was just enjoying myself. But interestingly enough, when COVID hit, it almost forced myself to look within, right? To do some self-reflection, to try to understand, okay, like, where am I at right now in life?
Yeah.
Is like, how would, past Dan, maybe like freshman year Dan in high school, or even like 7th grade, 6th grade Dan
Yeah.
in middle school, how would they think of me today? Is this where we thought we would be,
Yeah. Yeah.
And after asking myself that question, it started to spark some innovative tendencies in myself, right?
Yeah.
Now, I started doing my own research on what other majors they had at Rutgers because, unfortunately, I did not qualify to get into business school there. But, I think through that, it was almost like a olive branch, you could say. It was almost like a silver lining through it all. And that led me to the major I currently graduated with, which was information technology and informatics.
Yeah.
And I specialized in web design and product development. And honestly, if it hadn't been for me getting into the business school, I'm not even sure if I would be here today. It was only because I started actually enjoying learning and enjoying school and enjoying what I was getting myself involved in that led me to where I am today, right?
Yep.
Like I was not doing well. I was miserable trying to just get into the business school at Rutgers, right? But as soon as I stopped focusing on like, okay, like I think this is the most successful route versus like following the route where it's the most passionate for me, right? That's when success started to follow. And
That's when it changed.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess, the whole point of that is to say, I wish I had chose the passionate route first out the gate instead of trying to chase after the successful route, or at least what I thought was going to be successful.
It's funny you say that because the exact same story happened in myself. I go to the University of Maryland and I'm super excited. It's my dream school. It's our dream school. And I remember my mom, we all went to get signed up for my classes together. My mom, myself, and my dad. I don't have any older cousins that are too close to where they could help me with this process. I don't have any older brother. So we all go in together. My mom and dad are like almost in a way arguing over what courses I should take. My dad's like, oh, we should take the business classes. My mom's like, you should take math and science. So I ended up taking the craziest course load ever my first semester. I'm taking biology, Calc 2, English, econ, all the hard classes at once. And I'm telling myself, I'm going to be a doctor, I think. I don't know what I'm going to be. And I did terrible. And it was the worst. People say freshman and senior are the best 2 years. My freshman year sucked. It was really bad. I went through a long-term relationship breakup from high school. I had a terrible start to college. I didn't get my first A in a test until my sophomore year. So, and I'm in a new place. I don't know anyone there. And I'm really struggling, right? But when did it change? The exact moment it changed for you. When I went to my mom in her room and I asked mom, yo, how am I going to get out of this rut? What am I doing with my life? Why am I failing? I've never failed this bad before. She said, do what feels right and follow that. And let's see if we can make it and things can get better. So I said, all right, I'm done with this doctor stuff. I'm done with all that. I'm going to just try to be in sports business. And what did I do? I tried to be in the business school like you, and like you, it did not go well. And because I thought that was the objective best path. But what I realized was that there is no objective best path.
No.
It does not exist. For you to be working on Wall Street, or for you to be a certain doctor, or for you to be an entrepreneur, there is no follow these steps, take these courses, be this major. That will get you there.
Blueprint.
There is none. My strategy was, I don't recommend this, but I would skip class and network all day. So I took the easiest major. I was a communication major on purpose, so I'd have the least amount of coursework, so that way I could have the most internships as possible and the most connections. So everyone has their own way to figure out what they like, but what sparked all of that is thinking about, okay, what do I love? How do I get there? And that's what I did. So yeah, I think that's my biggest thing on when you're in college right now. If you're watching this at home and you're in college, whether you're a senior, whether you're a freshman, it's never too late to do what you want to do, because if it doesn't feel right, it's probably not right. Like, trust your inner voice, trust your judgment, because we were talking about this earlier in the car, actually on your way here, is that everyone has their opinion on what you should do with your life.
Yep.
Right? Everyone, I have my parents, I have my siblings, I have my best friends, I have my other family members, I have my college friends. They all have an opinion on what I should do if I ask them, but none of that actually matters. Sure, it matters a little bit. Like I trust their opinion, but what matters to me? What matters to myself? What do I want to do? That's the question that needs to be answered.
You know what? It's sometimes not the easiest to answer that question.
It's not.
Right?
And it takes a lot of self-reflection. Like, it takes you a lot of deep thinking, like you were saying. You thought back to your 6th grade self, your 7th grade self, your freshman year self. One activity I actually do, I started this last year, was I imagine myself as a kid, and I imagine myself walking out of like this like portal. Imagine yourself right now walking out of this portal, right? And it's all right. Like, is this kid excited to talk to me? Like, is this kid proud of who I am? If the answer is no, then okay, what do I have to do to get to where that is, right? Or my best self, my 27, 28, 29-year-old self, my perfect version of myself walks out of this gate, right? And I'm talking to him. What does that person look like? What does that person want me to do? If I was to give myself my own advice, what would that be? Follow your own advice.
You know, it's interesting you say that because I don't know if you ever heard this quote, but Matthew McConaughey once said, like, you know, it was something along the lines of, like, I'm always chasing the person I am 10 years into the future, right? And the idea of that
Say that one more time.
It goes something along the lines of, like, I'm always chasing myself 10 years into the future.
That's
right?
powerful.
Exactly. It's the idea of, like, you'll never necessarily get there, but you'll constantly be getting better every single day, every single month, every single year, right? Yeah. And so that ties back into your previous point. It's like, follow your own like passions, follow your own advice, and trust yourself, right? I think that's the biggest thing. It's like at the end of the day, like, your loved ones and your friends and even like your partner, you know, they're going to want to have input in your life choices. Yeah. Naturally, they care about you, right? Yeah. But at the end of the day, you have to make those decisions for yourself. You have to bet on yourself sometimes. And sometimes it goes against everything that everyone, you know, you care and love about is telling you, right? And it's scary. It really is, you know? But honestly, I feel like it's better to bet on yourself, take a chance on you, right? Yeah. And see how it pans out than to make a decision based on what other people have in mind for you, right?
And you're always going to ask yourself what later? What if?
And what if?
And asking yourself what if is one of the worst places to be in.
Exactly. I mean, take a look at you yourself, right? Yeah. It's like, what if?
Dude, when I had this idea of Growth Street, everyone was telling me, are you sure you want to stop working? You're making a lot of money. You're working in big tech. You worked at LinkedIn. Now you can go wherever you want. You can go work at Google. You can go work at Apple, wherever it is. You can work a really comfortable life, live where you want to live the lifestyle you want. And something about it still was like, that's not what I want in here. And as much as the advice was like, you're going to have security, you're going to have insurance, you're going to have all these benefits, you're going to be financially secure, it felt in my mind like a compromise. Like, I don't want to, like, me personally, I'm a dreamer, right? I think I was this way as a kid. When I would sleep, I'd hallucinate, I'd dream like these crazy things. You know, my dreams, I'd always have crazy dreams. Like,
dreams.
Literally, I could remember all my dreams, like all of them. And that, I think, in general, when I was a kid, I wanted to do all these big things with the world, right? When we're all 5, 6 years old, you know, no one says when they're 6 years old, oh, what do you want to be? No one says, I want to be a consultant. And if you do, that's okay, because I'm not saying that's a bad decision. But myself, I was never going to tell myself, you know, I want to, you know, be in technology sales. And I don't think it's a bad thing that technology. It's a really great career, a lucrative career. You can build your whole life around it. I know people that have, but I want to like dream out loud. I want to follow my inner voice. So, for example, like let's say someone's passionate about the gym, or someone's passionate about video games, or someone's passionate about music, right? You can always, in my opinion, try to get that job for some company that you want to do, but it's, okay, let's try to find a solution or a compromise for yourself that allows you to do what you really want to do in a capacity that can benefit your life. Yeah. For example, let's say you are really into graphic design and editing. Maybe you don't want to maybe you can make $100,000 a year, for example, working at an accounting firm because you have good accounting, you're good at math. But if you really love graphic design and you keep doing it when you get home every day, when you're done with work and it's your favorite little project to do, why don't you go work for maybe the same company or a similar or some kind of a corporation and do graphic design there? Why don't you create your own graphic design company, your own agency? There's so many ways you can really chase your dreams in today's society, especially because of social media and all that kind of stuff, exactly. all the access that we have. So again, it goes back to the whole point of like, what do you want to do?
Exactly. Right? You only get there if you take that chance on yourself, right? Yeah. And I think that's the biggest thing in not only in your professional career, but in life as a whole, is that you need to do things for you, because at the end of the day, you know, no one else is walking through that door down that path.
You're all you got.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I think, again, this is where it comes down to where I'm curious about your career, because, you know, for you, I feel like, me knowing you for a long time as I have, you were someone when we were younger, you were so excited to be an adult. Like, that was like, you were so excited to grow up. That was always a big part of your personality, right?
For the cool parts of growing
up.
Not the taxes and the rent part. And
yeah. But I look at you now and I'm just like, I'm proud of you, because I look at yourself, you know, you're working a great job in New York. You moved in with your girlfriend in this amazing, beautiful apartment. You have a pet dog now.
Thank you. Shout out Masha and Tofu.
Yeah, exactly. But my whole point is, like, everyone's goals and dreams are different. You don't have to be Steve Jobs. You don't have to be Tom Brady. You don't have to be like an astronaut, but you have to be someone where you know what you want and you're working towards that, whether it's a lifestyle, whether it's a certain amount of money you make, whether it's a family member you want to take, whatever it is, you can do it. As long as you follow what you believe in and you reverse engineer those goals.
Exactly. And, you know, that leads me into my next point, which is being adaptable, being versatile, right? Because to your point, yeah, sure, maybe the 1% of the 1% coming out of school, they know exactly what to do in their newfound roles.
They're unicorns.
They're prodigies. Exactly. Yeah. And, you know, the reality is not everyone's going to be like that. I certainly was not like that. I broke a lot of eggs in the first few months of my job, right? Yeah. And, you know, all I can say is that it's, in my opinion, the most valuable trait anyone could have is to be versatile, to be adaptable, right? To understand how you're able to take what you've learned, what you know, your experiences, how to turn that into a productive and positive thing towards the goal or job that you currently are going for, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, for me, I had, you know, very little, if any, work or experience working with SQL before, right? But, you know, from my developer internship at Bank of New York Mellon, I had some experience in Angular, JavaScript, Python, that sort of thing, right? Yeah. So when I would go to W3 Schools or Stack Overflow or any of these, you know, outside web pages, right, to learn more about SQL, you know, I was trying to see, okay, like I interpreted, you know, looking at JavaScript code like this or Python code like this, how could I relate that to SQL, right? Like, how can I understand it this way, right? And even though those languages are used very differently, they are different in and of itself, I still found some of the bare bone concepts to be able to understand it, right? And so that's the biggest thing, is that in your career, in life, there's going to be curveballs thrown at you that you just don't see coming. Yeah. In my particular line of work, it happens every day. The type of issues I see, no two issues are exactly the same, right? Sure, they may be relatable, right? Mm-hmm. But it's my duty to think back to those previous problems, those cases that I solved, and apply that to the current issue or problem I'm dealing with. Yeah. Right. And so being, again, adaptable at what you do is probably like the number one thing you could have.
Yeah. And it makes me wonder, right? So I always try to tailor this to our audience. Our audience is mainly ages 18 to 24. So people our age and younger, people who are trying to really figure out what's next in their life. Like, because you really have these kind of sequences, right? Whether you're in first grade, second grade, third grade, then you have, you know, middle school, 6th grade to 8th grade, then you have high school. Everything happens in these 4-year spans. When you finish college, if you go to college, that kind of sequence is over. Now you're in the home stretch now. So for people who are, you know, daunted by this idea of, oh my gosh, I have to apply for internships, I have to apply for jobs, I have to start this new life, I have to really plan for that. Going kind of further past adaptability, what advice have you learned from walking the walk? Because you've done a lot of this, you know, like myself, we're older siblings, not too many older cousins to rely on. We have our parents, but they did things a different way. What are the things that you've learned from falling in those holes, from crashing and burning, from really going through some of these positives and these lows? Because we both have had a lot of each. So what have you really taken away from your experiences in your almost professional and life development that you think can be almost followable tips for the younger generation?
Yeah, I would say accountability, taking ownership of those mistakes. You know, don't run from the heat. I would say that when you do own up to a mistake, it not only shows, you know, your managers, your coworkers, but also shows yourself like, hey, like you can be trusted to, you know, not only not make those mistakes again, but learn from that mistake, right? Number 2 is carrying over, okay, I did this certain way, and making sure that you're not replicating. Sorry, wait, that doesn't make any sense.
You're good. Yeah, I'm thinking. Yeah.
Um,
You're saying no need to reinvent the wheel. Is that what you're saying? Something along those lines, or I'm curious.
just necessarily like understand the thought process or the method you went through to get to that mistake, and try
Okay.
not to let that happen again.
Okay,
So
yeah.
understand, trying to
Just learning from your mistakes.
yeah.
So yeah, I think the big thing again, as we were talking about before, is you're not defined by your successes. You're defined by how you get up and succeed, right? For example, there's a great quote where it's, Michael Jordan says, even though I've hit, 20, 30, 40 game-winning basketball shots in his career, he's missed over 60 or 70, right? If you go out and you fail once, let's say you're applying for jobs, if you fail your first application, your second application, you don't get a return, you don't get an offer, your third or fourth, that's not a sign for you to stop and quit. What is it a sign for you to do? Change something, get 1% better, and try again.
And I would say, another skill to have or try to acquire at least is taking those moments of being down, of making those mistakes. Don't let it weigh you down, right? Like don't necessarily obsess over the fact like, oh my God, like, man, I really messed up. Like my boss is upset, or like my clients are upset, this and that. Like, no, like, yes, acknowledge the fact that you made a mistake, but turn that into a fire. Turn that into something where you're like, okay, I want to get better now.
Yes.
I'm going to do everything in my power to not make that same mistake happen again. But on top of that, if you can, try to optimize the learning experience out of it, right? So, I would say that definitely those are probably some of the best traits to have.
Think about a bad day, man. In life, there are going to be some really bad days. There's going to be days where, I'm going to be as honest as possible. There's going to be days where your parents die, where your sibling gets hurt, where you get, someone in your life, those are bad days. Those are really bad days. One day you have a bad day at work, do not let that be your bad day, because bad days are coming, but that should not be a bad day for you. These are moments of these are learning opportunities. It's all in your mind. It's all how you frame the world, your view of the world, right? If you look at something let's say you failed a test. If someone who gets an A on every single test that they ever take gets an A on every single test, then good for you. And then they're going to fail one test one day, and they're going to say, oh my God, it's the end of the world, right? But the kid who fails a test gets a good grade, does a little bit worse, and then optimizes and does good again. That's how you learn. That's how you get better at what you're doing. That's how you figure out how to handle that bad moment and change it. Because, again, those bad days are coming. You don't really want to waste your emotional energy where you can spend that time learning and growing and embracing this chaos that is all these hard moments that you're experiencing in work. Let's say your boss is mad at you, you messed up a project, or your teammate relied on you and you couldn't come through, or you personally messed up your own demo, or anything like that can feel like the world is crashing down upon you. Imagine you had a last round interview for your dream company and you didn't get the offer. That can kill you. That can really mess with your emotional being, but you have to look at it with a positive lens, because that is how you move forward, and then you secure the bag or whatever your goal is the next time.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, Dan, I could talk to you for hours, as you know. So I'm curious, before we kind of wrap this thing up here, I really want to hear about, if you're going to, again, go through everything you did again, talking to your younger self, what advice would you give?
I would say stay curious. Don't be afraid to ask questions, even if you think that the question you're asking is stupid, or if it's going to embarrass you. Anything of that sort, don't think that at all. Because in all honesty, I would say that there's more positive people in the world than there are negative, and there's always people out there trying to help you out, right? Trying to not have you make the same mistakes that they went through, right? So I would say number one, don't be afraid to ask questions. Number two, stay curious.
I mean, curiosity is a big thing, man. I'm the same way. I think when you're curious, that's the light you have on. Those are the eyes you have on when you're a kid, right? When you're a kid, you're so curious. You always ask why. It's the annoying question, but that's that curiosity. Don't let that die out.
Number two, I would say learn to be passionate, right? So I think that it's kind of easy to just, say like, oh yeah, like I'm doing X and like this is just like what I do, right?
Yeah.
But to learn how to be passionate about it is a whole different game. I mean, when I came into the role, I wasn't like super passionate about financial markets or financial services as a whole, right? But now that I understand it, right, I've grown an appreciation for it
Yep.
to where it's like, okay, wow, like it does interest me. So
Yeah.
let me go out of my way to read up on these articles on New York Times or Bloomberg, or like go out and get my SIE certification, or understand like what our competitors are doing, right? So
Yeah.
I would say like learn to be passionate is probably the second thing. And then the third thing I say would be to understand how to go through adversity. And understanding how to go through adversity, you have to just go through it.
Yeah.
And I would say some of the easiest ways to go through adversity is understand the fact that there are things that you can control, and there's also things you can't control. And when it comes to the things that you can't control, just know that you did the best you can, right?
Yep.
You went to maybe your peers, or you went to your managers to try to help out and stuff like that, and it might not fall your way still, but that's okay, because you know what? Tomorrow, when the sun comes up, it's a whole new day. It's a reset, right?
Yeah.
So I would say that.
Yeah, I love it. Dang, thank you so much. And I guess before we kind of wrap this thing up, do you have any shout outs you want to give for anyone watching at home? Is there anything you want to plug? Shout out this is your opportunity to share, kind of say what you want to say.
Shout out my other ACS members on the team. Y'all are the only reason why I'm doing so well. I would say, shout out my parents, shout out my brothers and sisters. And, I just want to say thank you again. I mean, this is someone that I grew up next to all of my entire life. He has been probably the number one reason as to why I am who I am today, why I'm here. I even remember during the early part of my, collegiate career and even professional career, you were there at every step of the way to give me great advice. So definitely watch Growth Street, continue paying attention to Darsh's page and his business. Greater things are to come. I promise you.
Yeah. Thank you, brother. That's what you are. You're my brother. And I appreciate you being here. I think we had so many great things to say. And again, the reason I value your voice so much, the reason why this podcast with you is going to be so great for everyone watching is because you just finished college. You just finished almost 2 years in a new role, and you have so much experience to share. So I'm excited to share your experience with the world. So thank you, Danny. And I know we have a lot more chapters to write in our story. And this is just the beginning. This is our rookie year, man. We're just getting started. So
Yes,
thank
sir.
you again, brother. I appreciate you.
Yes, sir. Let's
get it, man. Thank you, bro. Thank you.